All right, so this is another belated response vlog to Critically Sovereign. We're gonna do chapters 5 and 6 kind of together because I kind of grouped them along similar means. These two chapters are very philosophical and more legality terminology filled, and just a lot of governmental, just legal issues. Chapter 5, a lot about sovereignty through legislation. They talk about the Indian Child Welfare Act that was established in 1978, or otherwise known as ICWA. This actually received some backlash from natives, but also was seen as an extension of their sovereignty, recognizing them as an actual people. Obviously, there's problems within that, but it did give them some freedom to try to maintain their own kids and their dominance over their own children. And we talked a lot about how even in the state of South Dakota we see issues with ICWA and native children still being taken away today at the state and foster care system's benefits. But after the money kind of gets transferred over, if these children go missing, it's not that big of a deal, which is really sad to see. This just kind of maps the Indian. The chapter talked a lot about mapping the Indian. ICWA gives jurisdiction over native child custody. And there's just a lot of language about what actually makes up a tribe. Tribal sovereignty within a sovereign nation is hard. And I don't think if you ask a person on the street if they think, the tribes of America that still exist today, they probably wouldn't acknowledge them as their own nations or sovereign in themselves. People and reservation language, they just nobody really knows. I didn't know too much about this whole hemisphere about indigenous studies before I took this class. So it just goes to show how uneducated probably the nation in the world is about sovereignty and distinction of tribes living within a nation. Within America, this happens in the plains, on the East Coast, Alaska, Hawaii, all territories of the U.S., but yet there was people before, and they're still sovereign. And then chapter 6, not too much I pulled from it. I think it was very hard to understand. It kind of went over my head a little bit, but they use the example of I forgot the name, but the white man and the black woman marrying, the big court case, and just kind of how queer studies and just kind of how that all fit in and was very looked upon poorly, and that there is a distinction between queer studies and queer indigenous studies. The book made that argument in the beginning right away, and they say the author said they kind of a lot of popular culture seems to adopt the native narrative, but only towards certain means to talk about oppression and things, and group them in with all these other issues when indigenous feminism and sexuality is a totally different hemisphere. And a lot of scholars have actually debated against it being involved in all these movements because it's so different. But yeah, these two chapters were a little bit harder to understand. I get that's the nature of the book, but yeah, so that is 5 and 6.